Yeah, I just want to open with, thank you, Oris, for pulling this together, and it's really good to see a lot of active inquiries, a lot of interest in this ATSC 3.0, and that's exciting, and that helps to build the momentum. But I think the big part of this too is that it's going, and as Madeline said, it started, it's rolling, it's going, and we're at a point where it's time to really start looking at the reality of implementation. So I'm going to talk about lightly some of the technology. I think I'm going to feel both some of the pleasure and the perils of being number two presenter today, as Jerry has touched on many of my points, but I'm going to reinforce some of those as well. And so I'll get on with this. So good morning. It's great to see such a good turnout. It looks like a full house here. And we're all aware the media industry is changing. It's changing very, very fast. No longer is it the day of the living rooms, but this is the device. This is the service that needs to be fed with content. That's what the consumers are demanding. That's where they're going. And with that, with Madeline's comments that we have to play our part. We could choose to bury ourselves in the sand and not do anything and ride this broadcast thing out. Who wants to do that? It's not specifically not a very bright future of a traditional broadcast model. So, and with what Jerry pointed out, to combine these and roll in OTT along with over the air, we would look at the cord cutting, the cord shaving, the cord nevers, all of this. Where's broadcast? And again, Jerry hit it very, very well that we're in a transition, and if we don't change with it, we're going to die. So I ask ourselves, what are we going to do about it? So, thank you, Jerry, for the intro. What are we going to call this? Next Gen TV is there's no question that we have the need for a new standard. We have been working on this for a number of years with hundreds of people, hundreds of companies. But what are we going to call it? And a moniker of ATSC 3.0 doesn't really roll off the tongue of the consumers very well. And so we have a new Next Gen TV brand, a logo. This will be the consumer-facing part of what might be stamped on the side of a TV set box, but powered by ATSC 3. So that's what we're talking about here is really the engine, the driver, what makes this work. The reason for ATSC 3. This is what we cannot do today in what we call ATSC 1. You can read through these, limited bandwidth. We've maxed out our capacity in both delivering content and the ability and the types and styles of content that we can deliver. It's what it is, and we can't do any more without ATSC 3. But in a world of ATSC 3 and with the wireless and the MVPDs, we can all really band together and drive this home to have a better consumer experience. And it's not all about the broadcaster. It's not all about the CE manufacturers that need to churn new television sets. We have to look at it from the voice of the consumer. And so what is that value proposition for the consumer who's going to make them want to go out and buy a new TV set or have this incorporated into their mobile devices? Things like personalization and interactivity, it's expected today. The consumers, that's their world. And look at the kids coming up. Look at the students on this beautiful campus here that, they don't know the days of our rabbit ear days and such. So you have to look at where their future started from, and they started with digital. It's amazing to me sometimes, I'll see little kids, 3, 4-year-olds, like with mom's cell phone, just playing games and things. They're the digital natives. They're the ones that have come up into this. So these things are expected, and we've got to find a way to deliver that. So really, what is ATSC 3? In a nutshell, it's a suite of standards for television and data broadcasting that marries the internet and broadcasting. It's all IP-based, and it enables many new features and functions that I'm going to cover here in just a minute. But ATSC 3.0 is the glue that brings all this together. So we've had a big convergence of, we've had our cellular, you got the carriers, you got the cable guys, you got the broadcasters, everybody operating in their own silos. Thank you. And so now it's time to bring this together into one experience. And there's no reason why we can't bring in together the technologies to make it work for the consumer experience. So we have set out and developed the new standard with these 21 sections and 4 recommended practices. I want to thank Orist for being so generous with their time. So he's given me 4.5 hours to cover all of these standards. There's the coffee. No, but I'm not going to go deep into the standard. I'm not going to go deep into how it works and the math and science behind it, but I can point you to where you can find it. So atsc.org, there's a prominent drop-down in the top there where you can see all this and get this for yourselves at the fabulous zero cost. So for the engineers in the room who want to learn more, this is where I would encourage you to go and take a look at. So I'm not going to talk deep on any one of them, but I'm going to skim over a little bit, talk about some of the key benefits. Why are we here? Why are we interested in this? So we talk about efficiency and a more efficient use of our bandwidth for fixed and mobile. Michael, these are your digital pipes. With these layers, you could look at, I don't think that pointer works here. So we're on the left, you can have a base layer where that's your core, say your HD content, but you can also put in other layers, and you can have enhancement layers where you can add to that, where you could have that feed into for UHD. So these pipes here are defined just like Jerry's analogy of the straws. You can start them up, you can shut them down, you can add, you can do many things. It's a very highly configurable in the what we call the file layer, the physical layer. That's about as technical as I'm going to get with you guys here today. But just think of what you can do in that kind of an environment versus today. With 3.0, you can have mobile, you can have fixed, you can have a lot of other things on here that I haven't even illustrated, but this shows just how things can be configured. And with better efficiency and a lot more bits to be able to deliver, we can do so many more things. Better coverage. So we talk about the single frequency networks, and many areas, at least in the States, and I would think also in Western Canada with a lot of mountains and such and terrain challenges, you get holes in your market. You get people that live on that other side of the mountain. You get people who are in a canyon and can't get your coverage. It's kind of hard these days with what we have to work with to fill that. So with single frequency networks, we can do a better job of doing that and not have to go out to the government and ask and be told no for another channel to do it on. So this is one of the key enabling technologies that I think is going to make a big difference in better coverage and to also augment the mobile experience. So here's the question, the 5G question. So at least in the States, we're not in bed with the cellular carriers necessarily. So our job with ATSC is to define the standard that could work to enable this into devices. We're not making business arrangements. I'm talking about the ATSC. We're not the ones that are going and talking about that. I think there's a lot more flexibility and a lot more open-minded thought about that here in Canada, and I think it's a very, very good thing. So be it they put the chip in the phone or the iPad or whatever the device, the kind of device doesn't matter, but there are other ways of doing that, such as the home gateway Jerry touched on, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But better coverage is a key part of what we are able to do with this. I'm going to run through quickly some of the features and functions on what this will do. So I'm the recovering broadcast operations and engineer. So what will this do for the consumer? What will this do for the whole ecosystem for a better experience? So these are some of the things that the new standard will support, certainly 4K, it's a piece of cake. But we talk about these enhanced HD, wide color gamut, high dynamic range, and higher frame rates. We talk about the efficiency. We'll have a lot more bits that we can push through that pipe very quickly and effectively. Additional program streams. You talk about the DigiNets. We can add dozens more. We can add, many more just through those pipes. It's how you want to program them. And one of the things too that, when I look at workforce and I look at people and we start looking at the future of this is more app-centric now. This isn't just wires and cables and patch panels and boxes anymore. So when we talk about developing our new workforce, code writers, app writers, that's what we're going to need. So with wide color gamut, you get richer colors. With higher data capacity, you'll get better pictures and better resolution. 4K, potentially 8K, but sharper pictures. Better contrast with high dynamic range. And the ability for higher frame rates. So the standard will enable these things, but when you start looking at like a television plant, a broadcast plant, there are some infrastructure things that will need to be dealt with and added on. And it's going to take a vision, it's going to take a plan to upfit your facility. And it's one of the things that, as broadcasters, that we struggle with, especially in these days of the economics of our business, and that is nobody's going to just reach in their pocket and pull out about $50 million to build a new TV building. Okay, so it's got to evolve. So that's where we will also need more planning and more skills with our workforce to design and develop these facilities to be able to do this. So audio is one of the areas I'm the most excited about. To me, audio is just such a not a good experience when I watch TV. So what will this support? So an enhanced immersive experience, use of audio elements. So not necessarily sending a standard audio mix as we traditionally do today. Surely we will, but in addition to that, imagine some of those data pipes could be configured to do other audio tracks, other language tracks. You're watching a hockey game and you want the commentary from the visiting team's commentators instead of the local guys. There's a slide coming up here about auto racing. So look at all the sources of audio that's out there, but look at what isn't being delivered to the home or to the mobile device. This can change that in a big way. So for a more immersive experience, improved sound dimensions, we'll work on different devices and speaker setups per device. I mean, you're not going to listen to 22.1 sound on an iPhone, okay? So this has the ability to deliver those things to a home receiver. But again, it's totally flexible, very, very configurable. It's what do you want to do? How do you want to build your business in delivering these? Personalization. Okay, so you have, if you may be in a mixed family or a dual language family, and maybe some people want this in English and some might want to hear it in French. You could configure it that way. Alternate commentary, director's commentary, and improved dialogue enhancement with technology that will help. I'm going to get into a little bit of hearing impaired in a moment as well, but I think in the audio area, there's a lot that is going to change. Data interactivity. So we talk about the need for a personal experience, and that's what the consumer wants. So this will enable a lot more flexibility with that by having the back channel. So again, it's marrying the internet and the receiver with broadcast. So now you've got a bidirectional path to the receiver. Hey, phones have that now. We're behind. We have a one-way. This will bring that in. So look at some of the possibilities you can do if you've got a back channel connection from the receiver. Such as sports replays, okay? So yeah, we have DVRs at home and things of that sort, but this will enable you to go and design these apps, these services, where you can do sports replays, shopping, interactivity. My wife buys more things on Amazon with her phone than she does with her laptop. So it's always on the go. And we need to get there. We need to have that ability, and we can. So then you can start to mix. So you look at the left-hand screen is the linear program, what we're doing today. On the right, you can have an augmentation where if these guys are talking about that bike, is like, oh, I'm a bike enthusiast, I want to check into that. Boom. Okay. So again, you've got to model your business. You've got to decide how you're going to do this. But to Jerry's point, it's almost infinite possibilities on how you can do this. Targeted advertising. So this can be a grid, if you're designing that each of these elements don't all have to be there at the same time or be the same thing. Whereas today, we can only deliver a full view here. You get what you get. So who's to say you don't have your linear ad that everybody would see, and then you can start designing in other areas. You're a local Ford dealer instead of the generic Ford Explorer. Where's your local dealer? You can have moving images and such in messages, so it can really change the way you do your advertising if that's a model you're going to stick with for a long time, where it'll make it more engaging and more personal. Accessibility. So just pause and think now at accessibility in our current broadcasting world. It's pretty darn limited. Yeah, we got closed captioning. Yeah, we got video descriptors. This can go so much farther in driving that home. Hearing impaired, hearing challenged. So who's to say somebody wants to have, the upper range in their hearing is bad, and you can change the tone on that. You can change and push more bass to them or what have you, or configure that on the set itself. Let the user do that. Track-specific audio controls. So my vision, how I see this, is the consumer at home is going to make a lot of choice in what that experience is going to be. And that can be even per receiver. Okay, so the living room experience may have a different look and feel and sound, or my elderly grandma comes and is like, well, I can't see as well or whatever. You can have custom configurations as well. I'm glad security got brought up earlier, because ATSC 3 is secure. We know, because it's happened before, yes, a TV set can be hacked today. So the debate rages on, is ATSC 1 secure? Well, unless you're going to find a way to interrupt that stream, you can say, no, it's not secure. And especially even on the radio side, you get these radio pirates that will just come and block in and just overtake the signal and just interrupt it and go crazy with it. But in the 3.0 world, it is secure. Digital rights management is built in. So then you can start looking at business models to where, say you want to have the core content free and in the clear, and maybe there's a premium layer or a premium element to that. You're a Downton Abbey fan and you want to learn more about so-and-so. So maybe you charge for that. You charge a little bit of a premium. And what may be called a freemium mode, where the core content's free, but the extra you may charge a little bit for. So some potential new monetization. Pay-per-views. So flexibility is a big piece of this. So I started out by talking about how limited today's television is. We really kind of not need to get there in the future. We don't want to be in the place we're at now. So specifically, and when the first vision of a new standard was conceived of, was it's got to be flexible. We've got to change with the times. We've got to be able to do new services that we don't even know yet, okay? So what's going to be the next cool thing in 3 years? We can't do anything else with our television today, but flexibility, adaptability, extensibility for new formats, new services is critical. So we start looking to reset the landscape. We start talking about rollout and implementation. Broadcaster will no longer be a silo. No, Jerry, I did not see your slide when I wrote mine. But the fact that it's all IP is a game changer, and it really changes the landscape. Broadcast and broadband will then be considered peer delivery mechanisms. I talk about enabling new business models. It's almost unlimited. So we start talking about how we're going to do this, how we're going to pull it off at stations. I'm a broadcast guy. We talk about the plant. We talk about the app writers, the code writers. But we need to start thinking about getting some other teams involved and get them stimulated. And that is the business folks writing business plans. How are you going to make money on this? And there's a wealth of ways to do it. What do you want to do? And then the content creators. So who's going to make this stuff? Who's going to make enhanced layer content? Who's going to make all these crazy audio things that we talk about? So we're coming up to that point in a rollout where we've got to start thinking about that to drive that home. None of this matters if we're not going to make money. The finance people aren't going to give you the money to do it if there's not an ROI to this. So that thinking needs to start. It needs to start soon. This will put broadcasting into the 5G ecosystem. Again, a business discussion to be had with those carriers. We talk about data offload using with 5G by broadcast. That's viable. And again, it allows us to bring additional value to the community. We as broadcasters, our goal is to serve the community. Yes, it's to deliver news. Yes, it's to sell commercials. Yes, it's to provide programming. Yes, it's to pass through the networks. But our license in the U.S. is based on community service. And that's a commitment that we have to maintain. We do it. We do a good job of it. I think we do a great job of it with what we have to work with. Gosh, what else can we do? Think about that. Okay? Emergency events. And John's going to talk a little bit about the A-Warn coming up in a few minutes about some of the really exciting things we can do to warn the public if there's a natural disaster, a weather event, an evacuation and such. So he will get deeper into that. Waking up the sleeping devices, geo-targeting, and much richer media. So, as I mentioned before, we need to engage those business discussions and the content with the content creators. Now's the time to stimulate our thought on what we're going to do with this. It works. You've got a new palette to create what you want to do. What are you going to do? So we need to start that stimulating thought on how we're going to use this and have applications for going forward. We need to engage the industries, NABA, ATSC, SMPTE, this SBE. And a lot of you guys here representing your firms, that we need to really start getting into a mode of education. I think a big piece of why you all are here today. We need to also look at managing the organizational changes. Look at your own company or your own government division or your organization. Look at that. How adaptable are they? And I got to tell you, as an old broadcaster, it's hard. It's hard to break that mentality down. It's hard to change people's minds. You may get a few in the room that might get really excited about this stuff. It's like, all right, we can do all this, we can do all this. It's like, are they going to deliver the money? Are you going to have an ROI? And what parts of this are you going to implement? And I've said for a while now that of all these new abilities that this can do, to do a rollout, instead of trying to do 20 things poorly, you need to decide maybe 3, 4, or 5 things to come out of the gate with. strong success and build on that. And it gets back to that consumer value proposition. What is going to make that guy out there go to the store and buy a new TV set? Today, why should he? Okay, unless his old TV broke and he's going to get what he has today. But what's the consumer value proposition? That needs to be well thought out. Industry leadership and institutions, and again, thank you, Oris, for bringing us all together here today. I think the timing is right, and I think it's a time to get excited, but we also need help from the academic world as well. Look at the kids coming up these days. These are our future generation, but these are the kids that are the digital natives. They're the ones that are used to this stuff, and they expect this stuff, so we've got to get it to them. So we need to find a way to bring in youth into our organizations, diverse thought. Everything doesn't have to be done one way. So think of the organizational challenges you're going to have and engage that. Engage your bosses, engage your managers. With that, I'll take any questions. Stephen.
You mentioned ATSC and the back channel, and I've been in the broadcast business since flat, and I can recall a lot of talk when we went to ATSC 1.0 about the back channel and the second screen. That kind of fell flat. How do you see that on ATSC.org?
I see it as an exciting possibility, but I also see it as a steep mountain of work that has to be done. Who's going to manage all this data? Careful what you wish for. You start getting all this usage data and you start going on this stuff. Who's going to manage it, right? And we, or at least the broadcast community, we're not good at that. It's like, oh, well, we can go and we don't have to pay Nielsen and ComScore for ratings data. We can do it ourselves or do it in our own company or our organization. Who's going to cook that up? It's a lot of work. So careful what you wish for, but that needs to be, explored deeper. It'll do it. We know it'll do it. It's working. Okay, so you're getting ready to get something that may have a lot of work. Again, you may decide to roll out and not do interactivity or use that back channel initially. And I personally have the view that maybe that's the best way to start. Start out with better pictures, better sound, accessibility, A-Warn. But it's up to you. Yes, sir.
In terms of time frames, introducing this standard and developing things, what about the concept of rollout, integrating existing technologies and maximizing what current technologies are able to deliver? For instance, we're seeing more of a light pipe come into homes and office environments where we're able to utilize that, even though it might be limited in terms of bandwidth and how much data you can send. But at the end of the day, the consumer's it's like everything else. 8Ks are out there. I've seen them. They're out there working on 16K. How the hell are you ever going to get content delivered in that fashion? We have to start somewhere.
Right.
My experience over many years of technology, it's really about what stage you integrate what exists and take the next steps to bring the consumer along with you. Otherwise, you annihilate the consumer and says, I don't understand this. I'm not buying this product. It's for the very few and it's at a high price point. So we need to find a threshold of what we have that exists today to be able to do a good rollout that will change things inevitably, but not manageable change rather than a revolution.
Mm-hmm. Well, certainly that's one way to approach. There are some things you can do, and there are some people thinking about that today. Most modern TV receivers have advanced video decoders. Okay, so go to MPEG 4. And that gets you some more bits. There are some things you can do. I think we really want to feature the standard today and some of the big exciting things to do. I would think that what is it you would do? What's the cost? How will that get the attention of the consumer? I'm not saying it won't or it can't, Just takes some more thought. Yes, sir.
I just want to know a little bit more about the back channel. So is that through the transmitter and through standard internet protocol, or like, does it work both? And how much bandwidth is there if it's through the transmitter?
So the first part of your question is, yeah, the back channel is going to be an internet connection out of the receiver, okay? Our transmitters, our ATSC, even an ATSC 3.0 transmitter is only going to be a one-way push, okay? One of the other things I forgot to mention too is that it's built into the standard to not have a persistent data back channel either. So there will be times when when you don't have a back channel. There are things that can be done about that by not having that full. You don't have to have a back channel to start with 3.0 either. So it's what you do. Unfortunately, the second part of the question, I don't know the limits of that data rate, but there are a couple guys in here that can tell you. Okay. Yes.
Dave, I'm interested in your question about changing your organization, changing your workflow, getting the business model, all of that. Add to it the fact that facilities are now moving to all IP plants. Is this another challenge, or is it an opportunity to integrate it?
I say it's a huge opportunity. The challenge is getting to the all IP plant, and the challenge is getting the money out of the CFO to build it, okay? And like I touched on earlier, in most television broadcast plants, they're old, okay? They've been around 40, 50 plus years. What do you got? You got back in the days where you have these poured concrete trenches in the floor and they're all full of cables, and then they filled up, then you're flying cables overhead. And so the analogy I make on this is typically the old cables in the trenches are left abandoned, and then you just put new ones on top. I mean, look at the transitions we did. We went from black and white to color. We went from mono to stereo audio. Oh, and then we went to multi-channel audio. There are dead cables in a lot of these plants, and it's just built up. I call it, it's like taking a core sample of the earth, to where you can see, oh, here's the transition to color era. But to go and rip out cables and lay in all new fiber and Cat5, it's a big job. It's a big job. It's an expensive job because unfortunately just about everybody's just abandoned things in place because it's just a quick and get it done and move on. So, yes.
I'm noticing on your list of new features, 3D. Hasn't that been and gone again?
Yeah.
Already?
Yeah. No, it's still around. It's still out there, but it was not a big success. Wasn't part of the consumer value proposition, was it? There wasn't a big uptake in it.
When you had the monster flicks and you could sit there in the theater with funny glasses on and scream.
Yep. I've got 3D glasses that came with my Samsung TV I bought about 3 years ago and haven't even opened the box. Yeah. Yes, sir.
Can you describe a bit more security involved without back channel? Would it be more than what you described as a freemium register? Basically, based on that.
I fully didn't understand your question. I'm sorry.
I'm just interested in understanding a little bit more security model without back channel in place. It's a matter of registering end devices and devices being receivers, and then everything falls from there, or there is more to it?
It's a system with registration and keys. Yeah. Yes, Madeline.
One of the things that the ATSC membership thought about at the beginning was how close do we want to be to the internet and the standards that are used there, and the answer was as close as possible. So hence the IP protocol. With the security system, we're using both signing certificates as well as digital rights management. And the digital rights management is based on common encryption, CENC. And so the typical common encryption products, there are actually quite a number of them. The usual top two that come to people's minds are Widevine and PlayReady, which are generally used by Amazon's, Netflix, and other OTT providers. The challenge was knowing that not everybody is going to plug their television set into the internet. How do you get those types of security systems to work when there is no back channel? And I'm happy to say that Google Widevine stepped up to enhance their Widevine product to enable an unconnected device to work. And the way it happens is that there's a series of licenses that are built into the product at the beginning, which is part of the way that you get the logo, the Next Gen TV logo that Dave presented at the beginning, is that you need to pass these conformance tests to make sure that you can do the decryption using the system. Since it's common encryption, we're not wedded to any one vendor. Coming back to the question, is this an open standard and can anybody play? And the answer is yes. Potentially there will be other vendors in the future that can be used. So the system works with connected and unconnected devices in a very similar way to which the internet works. If there's an internet connection, go get your license from the internet. If not, look into the internal storage of the television set. So that's how that works. The other piece that I think is important is the signing piece. In the US, the broadcasters have agreed everybody will sign all of the signaling tables in all of the applications. So a receiver can always check to make sure that it's a bona fide broadcaster that has sent the material. So in other words, they can authenticate who has sent this. So the question of can someone overpower my signal and can there be a man in the middle, the hope is that we have addressed that. Yep.
So signal is always an encrypted form. Each end device will have appropriate licenses in order to decrypt that signal.
That's right. It's up to the broadcaster whether they wish to use encryption or not. A broadcaster could send the signal in the clear if they wish, or they could send it encrypted if they wish. In which case, if they do send it encrypted, the devices will have the decryption capability regardless of whether they're plugged to the internet or not. That's a prerequisite for getting the logo to say that this is a next-gen TV device. Signing, however, is not optional for the broadcasters. Every broadcaster must sign their signal. Otherwise, there's no way for a receiver to understand whether a signal is not signed because it's been hacked or not signed because the broadcaster opted. So everything has to be signed. But encryption is optional. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Madeline. One more question, if any? Yes.
Yeah. Just got to continue on the security theme. Are there any safeguards to prevent internet mischief from occurring on the set? For example, it was 2 years ago, Mobile World Congress, there was a vendor showing smart TVs that had been infected with malware that mined Bitcoin. So on your dollar, with your power and wrecking your TV, somebody was getting rather rich.
Now you're scaring me. No, it's the world we're in. It's the world we're in. Madeline, you want to take that?
Yeah, so first of all, the TV makers are extremely aware of the fact that a TV can be turned into a brick or into something worse. So all of the applications which have executable code, which could be included in the broadcast stream, must be signed. And so the receiver can authenticate the origin of that application. In addition, Dave talked about the back channel, which certainly in the initial days will be via the internet or some other two-way protocol. And all of the communications between the receiver and the broadcaster's server on the network are required to be use TLS security. So we hope we have our bases covered. We know the hackers are smart, but we hope we're smart too.
Okay. Thank you, Madeline. And that was the fastest 4.5 hours on the standard. Thank you. Okay.